Hoffman, and welcome to this episode of Data Exposed Live, streaming live to Data Platform Summit. We are super excited if you are joining us via Data Platform Summit. It's a great event. It's happening online for free, and you can join now. We're also streaming to YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, my LinkedIn, you name it. We are streaming all over the place. So we're excited to have you on. We're going to be covering some latest and greatest announcements. We have a stacked lineup. Let me give you a sneak peek of who is coming. So again, this is our September Azure SQL News updates live from Data Platform Summit 2022. We want to thank the DPS folks for allowing us to stream on this platform as part of this wonderful event. You can see we've got great folks joining us, quite a stacked agenda, so we'll see how much we can get through in an hour. I think we're going to get through it all. Again, if you have questions, we want to encourage you to head over to aka.ms/dataexposedlive today. And if you are joining us through Data Platform Summit, or you want to join us through Data Platform Summit, you can do so by joining the Hydra room. So that being said, let's go ahead and get right into some product updates. All right, so let's start with some of the general availability announcements for Azure SQL. Azure SQL Managed Instance, we're going to have a deep dive on this after I talk at a high level, but just to give you a little taste of what's new in the GA space, we released Windows authentication support with AAD and Kerberos, including some very nice details on how to actually go about setting that up. For SQL Managed Instance and SQL Database, we also released user-assigned managed identity in AAD. Again, something we'll bring on a special guest to tell us more about. And also for Azure SQL Database Hyperscale, this is a big one. We announced the general availability of zone redundancy for Hyperscale. So this is something that's been available in some of the other service tiers, so it's great to see this land in Hyperscale as well. In the public preview space, we also have some exciting announcements. One that I thought was actually pretty big was the expanded support to standard editions of SQL Server 2019 for this link feature for Azure SQL Managed Instance. So this is a great one that's going to help you use SQL Managed Instance for disaster recovery and maybe even migration. And along the lines of migration, we also announced Azure SQL Managed Instance Resumable Database Restore in public preview. So this is going to help you kind of improve that migration, especially if it's maybe a pretty large database. Niko from the Managed Instance team is going to come on in just a little bit to tell us more about what this means for your migrations. And then last but certainly not least, some security updates, specifically automatic key rotation for CMK. So that's customer managed keys in SQL Database and SQL Managed Instance is in public preview. And basically this is going to help customers like yourself kind of simplify those key management and key rotation responsibilities. So lots of stuff. We're going to get into details on some of these things, as well as some things that you might have missed that have landed over the past couple of months. This year, I guess it's almost the end of the year, but this year we've also been covering the other database updates from Microsoft, so I just wanted to make sure we touch on those as well. For Cosmos DB, we announced the GA of integrated cache. This is something that folks have been really excited about. For Cosmos DB and MySQL, we announced some updates around logging, so something you might be interested in. Also, some security updates for MySQL Flexible Server with customer managed keys, so you kind of see some of these themes that land not just in one database, but often in multiple. We also announced a migration tool for Azure Database for Postgres Flexible Server. This is one I think has been long awaited by our customers, as well as the minor versions that are now available for Azure Database for Postgres, and this is the Citus flavors. Also some updates in the Redis side, so you might want to check those out if you're using Azure Cache, especially for Redis Enterprise. But that's kind of the whirlwind of the updates happening in the other database space. The next thing that I want to do is actually bring on Niko to tell us a little bit more about what's going on in Azure SQL Management, because it's always a lot. Niko, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's exciting times for Azure, and I would say even more exciting times for taking a closer look at the recent news in Azure SQL Managed Instance. As Anna introduced me, my name is Niko Neugebauer. I'm a senior program manager at Microsoft, and with that, we just got a couple of news. All right, and with that, if my clicker moves, then we have a great news about the resumable restore database migration experience that just went GA just a month ago. As Anna mentioned, user-assigned managed identity for Azure Active Directory is also went into GA. The key thing that a lot of customers have been asking us since the premium series were premiered at the last Ignite in the fall of 2021 was the premium series hardware. Those went into general availability. Windows authentication support with Azure Active Directory and Kerberos protocol went into GA. This is, I will go into each of these features, but it's this one really deserves a lot of the attention of those customers who are running legacy workload and cannot change their authentication methods. The development team, I have to say, did absolutely brilliant work with that. Then, I mean, this one is a kind of a minor improvement, but some of the customers suddenly noticed that their restore processes, when they would restore the backups, would take significantly less time. And that's a speed improvement for the restore processes on managed instance that the engineering team has implemented 1 month ago in August. Then, it's absolutely amazing feature. I'll dive into little overview of it is ADLS virtualization. With this feature, you can go beyond any 16, 32, 64, 1 petabyte of data
Wow.
for using together with managed instance. And the best part is you can use this virtualization of the data without customer noticing if your latency will allow you, but we'll go into the details. And then a minor item, but I think my dear colleague George Marinkovic, who worked for a significant amount of time, this one deserves really a recognition because a single document which a lot of customers, and not only the technical customers, but business-minded customers, the architects who are doing a holistic approach, they will really appreciate. This is a migration workload FAQ. With that, let's go into the little details. So first of all, you might have heard we're having this wonderful log replay service in public preview for 1.5 years already. But what does it do? Basically, log replace service is a SQL managed instance implementation of the log shipping. So for customers looking to migrate to managed instance, they can take a backup, let's say backup to URL, to blob storage, and then start the migration service and cut over whenever they're ready. It's beautiful. It's closer to online migration. It's not like a link feature for SQL MI, which, as Anna mentioned just a couple of minutes ago, we already introduced on 2019 supporting standard edition. But this one is a great experience. But what were some of the key challenges that we've seen the customers passing through? One of them was a resumable restore. So sometimes we need to patch the customer's managed instance, and that would break the restore process. So we did the process that gets suspended, we get their managed instance updated, and then it gets resumed. So the customer keep on restoring without noticing any maintenance or breaking and restarting. And the second one, we had a very significant limitation, 36 hours. If your log shipping would take more than 36 hours, because of the security reasons, we would have to cancel your process. Right now, we do not have a practical limit for that. Amazing improvement for those of you who are using LRS. Then, user-assigned managed identity. If you are using a storage account, or if you are using bring your own key for TDE encryption, if you want to do the role-based access control, you need to have an identity. And we have in GA, not only MI, but SQLDB as well, user assigned managed identity. So you can create in your Azure AD a managed identity, assign it to managed instance, and then control the access to different Azure services. We do support Azure Key Vault, blob storage. More and more will be coming. So this one is really great news. Then, talking about the hardware, as you can see, we have 3 offers currently. The standard series, or generation 5, as it was called previously, the premium series, and the premium series memory optimized. Premium series got into GA. So available into Ice Lake, the latest and the greatest, gives you not 5.1, but even 7 gigabytes of RAM per CPU vCore. The premium series memory optimized, I will tell you pretty exclusively, it's stay tuned. It's just, you can almost count the hours. We are about to push this one into general availability. Next one, Windows authentication. This one, as I told, we're supporting double hope, old legacy apps, amazing thing. You just sync your Active Directory into the Kerberos realm of Azure AD. And once you client application sends the encrypted Kerberos tickets, Azure SQL Managed Instance recognizes the format, goes into the Kerberos realm, and exchanges the Kerberos tickets for Azure AD token, and thus authenticating the user. It's not only supported for just a single hope scenario, you can use a double hope, even if you're using linked servers between different managed instances. Backup improvement. We can't guarantee how much we improve your restore process, but we've seen 2, 3, even more times improvement in that process.
Wow.
ADLS virtualization. So you can put your data in Parquet, CSV, or JSON format on Azure Data Lake storage or blob storage, and you can read them directly. Even better, what you can do is create an external table, and your T-SQL queries will still run with a little bit different latency, more network detachment, as to say, but it's amazing. It allows you to reach petabytes or even avoid to doing ETL at all. The last but not least is migrating SQL Server workloads, FAQ, holistic approach, business reasons, how to choose your best destination. And it's not only about the managed instance, it is for SQL Server in YAS, for Azure SQL Database, for managed instance, you name it. So I'm sure Anna will share the links. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Niko. This was a lot of updates, but also it's always exciting to kind of understand a little bit more about what these updates are. And as you mentioned, all of these have associated blogs or related docs. So check out the blog so you find the links to the other blogs. And Niko, really just thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to have you. Awesome. So that's Niko. That's SQL Managed Instance. And since we were talking about migrations, I thought this would actually be a great lead-in to talk a little bit about Azure FastTrack. And without getting too much into it, I'm actually going to bring up Bradley from the FastTrack team to tell us a little bit more about what FastTrack is and how folks watching this can take advantage of it, and some fun things that some folks on FastTrack are working on. So Bradley, thanks so much for joining us. How's it going?
Anna, thank you for having me. This is amazing. I'm so glad to be here. I got to start off with a little fun trivia for you, and I guess an homage to our good friend Buck Woody. Did you know that there are only 4 words in the English language that end in dos: tremendous, horrendous, stupendous, and hazardous? And just in case we get the other 50%, I wore my Ted Lasso shirt just for you, so we could be a goldfish. But let's dive into Azure FastTrack a little bit. So this is a product group that I've been a part of for over 4 years at this point in time. When I came on board, I was the 4th US data hire. And so I've got to see this organization grow, and it's absolutely amazing everything that we cover. One of the things I would say is if you are a customer and you are looking at doing a migration into Azure, we have different programs available. But what our job is to de-risk Azure migrations, to be able to take the knowledge that we gain helping customers just daily over and over again. And what amazing announcements Niko just had about managed instance. I have several customers right now that where we're migrating from on-prem to managed instance, and all of these new features that we have, we're taking advantage of them. Some are using log replay service. Some are going to take advantage of the increased backup speeds as they do dev refreshes from prod to dev. There's so many amazing things that we have going on in our products right now. And the big thing is that Azure FastTrack, while I'm data focused and you're data focused, we cover so much more than that, because we recognize when customers are migrating to Azure, they're coming with an overall solution. So we have app dev teams, we have infrastructure teams, we have networking teams, security teams, Fed teams. So if you're a Gov customer, we have people with the skills and the right level of classification coverage to be able to help you with your projects. So the goal is that you come in, you get nominated. If you go over that way to aka.ms/FTA, that will take you to our landing page. Anybody in our organizations that work with you directly, that are CSAs, TAMs, anybody who is working with you directly as an account representative can nominate you to FastTrack. If you're working with a partner can nominate you to FastTrack. And the key thing is that you've got to be spending about $5,000, which most customers are. That's a very easy bar for people to be able to enter into us. We're not a hands-on resource, but what we do is we give you all this knowledge, we meet with you, and we work with you through dev, through production, making sure that everything goes smoothly and you've had a great customer experience. Because that's what the CXP stands for, customer experience. It's a customer experience product group. Plus, we get to work with my great friends in the product groups, and we get a liaison with them to be able to give the customer feedback. One of my favorite things is being an advocate for customers and getting to work with our product groups and help find out all these new amazing things that the product groups are building so we can utilize them for customers.
Awesome. This is just such a great program, Bradley. So I'm so glad that we're bringing you on to tell folks more about it. And like you said, a lot of customers are going to qualify for this. So why wouldn't they take advantage of it?
Exactly. You know, it's funny. We had a customer that I was talking to yesterday, and they were going, well, okay, so we're migrating our databases, but eventually we're going to need help with DevOps. And we'd really like to understand more about Traffic Manager and how we have a multi-region setup for business critical disaster recovery. And I went, oh, well, that's great, because we got infra engineers I can pull over to help with the networking and the Traffic Manager. And I have DevOps engineers that I can pull over to be able to help you with CI/CD. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'm not the person you want. I pay attention to what's going on with data on a daily basis. These folks pay attention to what's going on with DevOps and with infra on a daily basis. So it's so great just to be able to help customers from a very holistic standpoint. And
yeah, I love it. I know you wanted to talk about this, but I also wanted to just say, like, from this experience, from being there from the beginning, probably you've seen tens, maybe hundreds of customers and their different architectures, their different challenges. So I'm sure you have a lot of like stories and experiences and advice to give. So I think that's maybe a good lead in to talk about some of the new stuff you and some other folks are working on.
Absolutely. We have this awesome show that we put together called Tales from the Field. And one of the things that we do is we have 2 shows on Tuesday and also on Thursday. Tuesday is a bit of a game show. We have a lot of fun. We invite great folks on. As a matter of fact, I'm looking forward to, I haven't even announced this yet, but the week of Ignite, you're going to be joining us. And yeah, I'm so excited about that. And we'll play a game. We pick a topic. All of us, whoever the host is, they pick the topic. They give out points. My good buddy Josh Ludeman just made a comment on YouTube. Josh is one of my co-hosts on the show, as well as Andreas Padilla, Niraj Jarafi, and we're at 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Times. On Thursday, we do a community roundtable where we're going to have guests from the community come in. We talk about blogs, videos, anything helpful, but we're trying to highlight those great people that we have. Some of them are MVPs. Some of them are on the road to be MVPs who are working in the data community to be able to get their great message out.
Awesome. Well, this is really exciting. I'm excited to watch Tales from the Field. I've already watched some of the snippets. I actually wanted to ask you, I saw a couple snippets that were only like 30 seconds to 1 minute long. Can you tell us about what these are if folks land on that in the YouTube channel?
Absolutely. So part of the key of this is to have fun, right? To when you get involved in the technical community and you're involved in the Azure data community, you will get to know the people behind this. It's easy for people to look at us and go, "Oh, this person works at Microsoft. Anna's so impressive, and here's all this." But we all go out and we all have fun, and it's important to be able to see that angle and that aspect of the community as well. And so these short little clips are just me taking out some funny moments from the shows, putting them together so that way everybody can see that at the end of the day, we're all just people getting together, having fun. We have this common bond of technology. But the key is for us to have fun. Nobody wants to do a job day in and day out where they don't have fun. And we all just have a great time whenever we get together.
Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I think I watched the one, what was it? Like on Voodoo Donuts, and there were a couple other ones that were pretty funny.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say the great thing is that's at Live 360. And while you're at the Path Summit and our good friend Bob is at the Path Summit, the exact same week on the other side of the country, we've got Live 360 going on. Myself, Buck, and Josh Ludeman, we're going to be there representing Azure SQL and doing a great pre-con on SQL 2022.
Awesome. Cool. Well, yeah, we'll have to make sure we include that in the next news update blog, a link for folks to learn more about Live 360. Looks like, Bradley, you all already have some fans. Looks like Lonnie, if I'm pronouncing that right, said such a great group of people. I caught it for the first time yesterday and really enjoyed it. So it's awesome.
Yeah, Lonnie is a great friend. I really appreciate that, Lonnie. Thank you.
Awesome. Great. Well, Bradley, thanks so much. Do you have any call to actions for folks? Obviously, go watch the show. Anything related to FastTrack?
I was going to say, go to aka.ms/FTA, find out about us, make sure and talk to your account teams. If you're not involved with FastTrack, you absolutely should be. If nothing else, we're just going to help make sure that things go smoother. We'll look over your architecture. So make sure and reach out and get nominated for the program. And then tomorrow we've got our community roundup. Daniel Taylor is going to be joining us. He's going to be at Data Saturday this Saturday over in Dallas with a whole host of great folks. And yeah, just enjoy yourself. And thank you so much for having me on the show. This is fantastic.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, Bradley. And we'll see you on your show soon. All right, awesome. Okay, so we are going to keep moving along, see some great comments in the chat. If you're streaming in through Data Platform Summit, we can see your comments in chat. So feel free to put any reactions, any questions, any things you want to see in there. But in the meantime, we're going to move on to talking about blogs and videos. Now, this was a busy month at Data Exposed. I don't know how this happened, but we had a lot of episodes. It's really a good thing. Maybe it's like an extra month. It does actually include a little bit more than a month. But anyways, we had some episodes on our Azure SQL Security series. This was really great with Silvani, and she's got a couple more coming down the pipeline, I believe. We had one from Jose from the Azure Database Support team, who's been leading this amazing series of support-related blogs that basically customers bring to us, something that we actually cover on this show as well, so you can see the full list of those later in the episode. We also had some MVPs and folks from the community come on to talk about things like caching with Fusion Cache, Azure Advisor signals, and protecting your sensitive data. I apologize, that's actually part of our SQL Insiders series. We have a lot of exciting series. Maybe we should bring someone on later in this episode to tell us about all the different things happening at Data Exposed. I think we're going to get Marisa to do that. But we also talk about other things like Azure Synapse Link for SQL and Microsoft Purview, which is Microsoft's governance solution. So definitely want to stay up to date and subscribe to our YouTube channel in the top right. That's also where you can catch shows like the one you're watching right now when we aren't being hosted as part of big events like Data Platform Summit. So next I want to go into some of the things that I selected from the Azure blog. So I just pull a selection of these. There's a lot of blogs that land here. Not all of them are really related to data, but this one stood out. This is the 2022 Gartner Magic Quadrant for Data Integration. So what you can see is Microsoft is landing in the leader space, which is really exciting to see this. And this includes products from us like Power Flows, I believe, as well as, of course, Azure Data Factory and some of the things that we allow you to do for our tooling for SQL Server. So it's exciting to see this land and just kind of a good affirmation that we're really working hard to bring you the best integration solutions for all your data movement needs. The next one I wanted to call out is related to Azure Data Explorer. Now, if you haven't used Azure Data Explorer before, this is essentially a component of Azure Synapse Analytics, but it's been around quite a long time. It's optimized for structured, semi-structured, and unstructured data. A lot of folks use it for time series or log and telemetry data. You can use SQL or you can use Kusto query language, KQL, to look at it. It's super user-friendly. I'm a big fan. But there weren't any benchmarks. So we worked with GigaOM, who does a lot of benchmarking for our other products, to develop some sort of benchmark so we could see how does Azure Data Explorer compare to some other services like Google BigQuery and Snowflake. And the results, and you can see the full results in the report from the news blog, basically show that Azure Data Explorer is superior in performance at significantly lower cost in both single and highly concurrent scenarios. For example, and that's what you're seeing on the screen, this is the results of executing the benchmark they developed while simulating 50 concurrent users. And you can see how much less time it takes to run with Azure Data Explorer. Also on the blog, just a couple other ones I want to call out that might be relevant to you. One is Azure Managed Grafana is now GA. If you're using Grafana solutions or open source Grafana or Telegraph or whatever to do monitoring for Azure SQL, this might be a good solution to you, to giving you kind of a managed Grafana for that. I also wanted to call out the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform blog that landed by Vicky Beiser. Basically, she talks about the Microsoft Intelligent Data Platform value prop and a specific scenario, as well as resources. And basically, she takes us through this scenario of how this new data platform can help navigate different supply chain issues. So especially if you're involved in supply chain related things, you want to check out that blog. The last one, and the GIF that's playing kind of on repeat on the right-hand side of the screen, is the Microsoft Dev Box. So this is pretty cool. I thought, again, not directly related to databases, but just thought it was really cool how quickly you can get up and running with a Dev Box. I'm sure there are more integrations to come, and this is just the beginning, but something I wanted to share with you all. All right, moving right along, we're going to talk about the SQL Server blog. Lots of exciting stuff here talking about SQL Server 2022, what's new for IQP, Query Store hints, Query Store enabled by default, which is also very exciting. This is already the case for Azure SQL Database, but now coming for SQL Server 2022. Some things around governance, and also the Azure Data Studio August release. I just wanted to flash this up really quickly because there were a couple cool things that came in this release. One was the deployment wizard, now supports SQL Server 2022. We also announced the release candidate for SQL Server 2022, so it's another exciting way to get started. We announced support for ledger objects and query plan viewer and some table designer updates. So lots of updates in here to check out, as well as SQL database projects and some extension updates. One of the extensions I really like, I'll just give a call out here, is the query history extension. Sometimes, I'm messing around a lot and I forget what I actually did to get the query I wanted. So query history extension is really great, and they're always working on some enhancements there. Now, I mentioned briefly some of the ledger updates for Azure Data Studio, but I thought it might be good just to bring on Pieter, who is the lead PM for Ledger in SQL Server 2022, to just tell us a little bit more about what Ledger is. I think it's so important. So I'm going to bring on Pieter. Pieter, thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Anna. Yeah, thanks for having me again on the show. Yeah, love to be here. Yeah, so I'm Peter. I'm a program manager at the data platform security team. So that's a team that manages all the security features of Azure SQL, managed instance, SQL Server, but also all the other data platform services that we have. And I'm just going to give you a short introduction on Ledger and what it is. It's all about digital trust and trusting your data. So how can you be 100% sure that the data that is inside your database can be fully trusted? To give you an example, I was a DBA in a previous life, and I could easily tamper with the data without anybody knowing it because I had system administrator permissions. So nobody would have ever noticed it. So how can our customers establish the trust with their partners, with their stakeholders, with external parties like, for example, external auditors? It's difficult, right, to do that. So what we noticed is that a lot of customers, they're looking into distributed blockchain technologies to provide that trust. But it is for them really complex to set it up. It's quite expensive to deploy, and it's also really, really hard to manage. And it's not even really performant. So that's why we came up with a feature called Ledger, and it's really all about making cryptographic proof make your data tamper-proof by using cryptographic links of data changes. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to capture and cryptographically link all the data changes into to each other by using a blockchain technology under the hood, so that we can make the data tamper evident and also verifiable, so that you can prove to external parties that your data can be trusted. It's inside SQL, so it's an Azure SQL database, and it is SQL like you know it, right? So it is high performant. You still have the simplicity of the relational databases. It's just an extra feature that you get on top of Azure SQL database and SQL Server. What are the use cases that we see for Ledger? Well, we see two main use cases. First of all, the one that I already explained is for streamlining compliance auditing. If you need to prove to external auditors, regulators, whatever, that your data can be trusted, you can use Ledger for that. And the other use case that we have is for multi-party systems, like, for example, supply chain, where you have different parties that needs or where they need to be able to trust or to verify each other's data that is stored in the database. So it's really the data that is centrally managed, but the trust is then decentralized. Let me quickly jump into a little bit more into detail how it works. So we have ledger tables, and we have two types of tables. We have updatable ledger tables and append-only ledger tables. Typically, of course, updatable ledger tables allows you to do update, insert, and delete statements used by the applications. And we also have append-only, where we block update and delete statements, so we just allow insert statements. Now, let's assume that a user updates a specific row in an updatable ledger table. What we're going to do is we're going to save the previous version of that row in the history table. And we're also going to add extra metadata on top of that, like the commit time, the user that has executed that specific statement, and also, for example, the transaction ID. So everything is stored in the history table. And then, of course, we're going to update that specific row in the ledger table as well. On top of that, you also get the ledger view, which gives you a chronicle overview of the data that is inside your updatable ledger table. So we're just going to join the updatable ledger table and the history table. Now, this is how we keep track of what has changed in the updatable ledger table, but where do we get that cryptographic proof from? Well, the data is cryptographically protected through what we call a database ledger. So every row in a transaction is going to be hashed. And then every 30 seconds, we're going to hash all these transactions into what we call a root hash. And we're going to add the hash of the previous root hash to that. So we're basically building a blockchain. So we have the first hash of all the transactions, and then we're going to link it to the next hash of the next 30 seconds. I'm mentioning 30 seconds, but the users, they can also generate what we call these database digests on their own by running manually a stored procedure. Now, once we have these hashes or these blocks, we also call them database digests. what we're going to do next is we're going to offload those digests automatically to trusted storage. And what do we consider as trusted storage is Azure Blob Storage with the immutability settings switched on, or we also have a new service in Azure called Azure Confidential Ledger. Now, at this point, now it becomes interesting because, for example, an external auditor can now verify whether the data that is inside the database can be fully trusted. So what we can do is we can run a stored procedure that is going to fetch the digest from the trusted storage. And in real time, we're going to recalculate the hash inside the database. And then we're going to match these two hashes. And if we have a match, then it means that the data can be fully trusted and we have cryptographic proof that nobody actually has tampered with our data. If these hashes do not match, then we are sure that somebody actually tampered with the data. And that stored procedure will also show you which transaction and which rows were tampered with. So that gives you proof for the customers to show that your data can be fully trusted. I already mentioned append-only ledger tables as well. Now,
awesome, cool. Thanks so much, Pieter. Oh yeah, exactly what I was wondering. Like, I know this has been around a little bit for a while in preview. Like, what's new?
What's new? Yeah, sorry, I was a little bit too fast here.
It's okay. I get excited too.
Ledger, it's already around for a while, like you said, in public preview, but we announced the general availability in Azure SQL database a few weeks ago at Build, so everybody can use it in Azure SQL. It is there, it is for free, it is in all different service tiers, so just go there and start creating your ledger tables and start enabling that automatic digest upload. Now, Ledger is also available in SQL Server 2022. It was already available in the previous CTP versions. The only issue that we had there in the CTP version is that automatic digest upload didn't work yet. But this has been now resolved. So now you can also have automatic digest upload to Azure storage in SQL Server 2022. So you have literally now the same functionality like you had in Azure SQL Database. You also have this now in SQL Server 2022.
Awesome, cool. Well, thanks so much, Pieter, as always, for coming on Data Exposed. Pleasure to have you. For folks who haven't looked at Ledger more, definitely check out the blog because we put links to all of these resources that Pieter talked about. We also did an episode on Ledger that you can go check out on our YouTube channel. And Pieter, again, just thanks for coming on.
Can I just do one promotion? I have a full-blown Ledger session tomorrow at Data Platform Summit, so join that as well if you want to know much more about Ledger. All right.
That is a very relevant promotion. So yes, please, if you're attending Data Platform Summit or you haven't even yet registered, go register and attend Pieter's session tomorrow on Ledger to get a full deep dive. And I'm sure there are some cool demos as well.
Definitely.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Pieter.
All right, Anna. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Awesome. All right. So we are going to move right along. We're still talking about things that are happening in the blog. So in the SQL Server Tech Community blog, you can see, as always, there's a lot of things going on with some of our different drivers and packages that we have. So definitely make sure you are all up to date there and you can view the blogs to see what actually came in those updates. I mentioned earlier one big thing was SQL Server 2022 Release Candidate 0 is now available for Windows, of course, but also on Linux. Also some other things around granular permissions that might be interesting and some deep dives on how certain things work. So you might want to check out the blog for that. There's also a guide around deploying always-on availability groups for RHEL-based SQL Server Azure Virtual Machines. So that's something you might want to check out as well. And related to SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines, I thought it might be good to bring up Ebru. My PowerPoint is frozen, but to bring up Ebru to tell us a little bit more about SQL best practices assessment for SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines. So Ebru, let me bring you on. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Anna. Hi everyone, I'm Ebru Ersan, Senior Program Manager at Microsoft. So I will talk about SQL Best Practice Assessment feature for SQL Server on Azure Virtual Machines. This is a really useful feature for DBAs, so I want to make sure everybody is aware of it, they can take advantage of it. I'll hit a couple of points in this slide, then we'll switch over to Azure Portal to see the feature in action.
Awesome.
All right, so what this feature does is it helps you figure out if your server is set up for success. It evaluates its configuration against best practices provided by the product team, and it's available if you're registered with SQLize extension in full mode and if you're using SQL Server 2012 or higher versions. Full recommendation list is published on our GitHub page. You can go check out the recommendations there. Let's switch to the Azure portal and see this in action. All right. So we're on the SQL Virtual Machine blade in Azure portal. You see the SQL Best Practice Assessment here. We'll spend a minute on how to set it up. When you first come to use this feature, you need to enable it. And the only thing you need to provide is a Log Analytics workspace name, because we're storing the assessment results in your Log Analytics workspace. This machine is already associated with one, so it's listed here. Drop down is grayed out. If it wasn't, drop down would give you options to pick from available workspaces. Simple as that. Optionally, you can set a schedule for your assessment runs. You can do weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever frequency you want, the usual options you have here. So you hit apply, everything gets deployed, you're good to go. Simple as that. So of course, it's a demo, so I'll switch to a machine where I've been doing some runs. You see the run assessment button is now enabled. You can start a run on demand anytime, or you can schedule one, like I showed earlier. And here we show you the 10 latest assessment runs. These all succeeded, but if they had failed, you would see the errors and investigate from here. Let's go look at one of the results. That's the more interesting part. So for this demo, I zoomed in a lot, but on your portal, this should look better, but we'll go through it here. First, we give you an overview of, where things are at. So you can see you passed, 85% of the rows, which is good, but you have some issues you need to look into, right? These are broken down by severity, high, medium, low, and informational. And this is a demo machine, so these numbers are small, but in a typical environment, we see thousands of these. So what we're trying to do in this workbook UI is kind of help you wade through all these recommendations, right? Thousands of rows of data, it's a lot to go through. So if we scroll down to the bottom, you see two tables here. The table on the left, this shows you all the rules that fired for your environment and how many times you hit these issues. And the table on the right is all the instances of recommendations we have. We'll go through some examples and this will be more obvious. For example, this rule, which is high severity, so you should pay attention. We're saying you should enable the lock pages in memory option. And if you click on that, we give you a little bit more information, like why we think this is important. It has to do with paging, and why that's bad for performance. And if you want to learn more about this option, every recommendation comes with a link to an online article, so you can go follow up on that. So that's details on that. So this was, one recommendation that applies to the server. Some rules apply to the databases. So in this server environment, we have 5 databases that have full backups older than 7 days. So we recommend you create a full backup for these. That's why, this is kind of the grouping that will help you kind of go through these. In some rules apply to like tables. For example, in this one, it's the table no cluster index rule. For this database, you see the table names. These are missing cluster indices, and we're asking you to review, and you should probably create a clustered index. We have, lots of rules. Like I said, the full rule set is published on our GitHub page. A couple more examples, maybe. We also tell you what is the product version you're using, and if it's not the latest CU, we recommend that you update that.
Awesome. This is really cool, Ebru. I could see how this would be very useful, especially if you did it at some frequency, so you can see how things change as folks work on the database or whatnot. It's awesome. You answered my question about all the rules being published on GitHub, so we'll make sure we share that in the blog. The other question I had is, it's great to use a UI, but is there any plans or any folks who are opting to use like an API or some other way of interacting with this assessment?
Yeah, the Azure CLI command line interface has options for this. So using that, Azure CLI, you can just script out all of this. You can enable, configure it, you can do runs, but just to see the results, you'll have to come to this workbook, but you can script out the running of the assessments basically.
Awesome, cool. That's awesome. And it seems like it's really straightforward. You just kind of go and enable it and connect it to log analytics, and you're good to go. Are there any gotchas or things folks should be aware of if they or when they go set up this for their SQL Server on Azure VM?
No gotchas. Like I said, the only thing we need is the log analytics workspace name. So make sure you have one available. Other than that, it should work just fine. I want to point out one more thing, that we have Azure VM specific rules also, not just general SQL Server recommendations. So for example, here we're saying you should configure your data file location, transaction log file location, etc. Or we have this rule, we want to make sure your temp DB is not on the C drive, that it's on the local temp disk, these help with performance. Another thing I wanted to show, this is the last thing, is let's say you did, one more thing. Another option, if you wanted to look at these results, is you can always export to Excel. So if you want to look at the results, offline or share with other people, that's an option. Or you can use these drop downs to focus on a particular database maybe, or if you wanted to just look at, let's say performance related recommendations. So that these are all things that help you, filter it into what you want to look at. Okay, so the last thing I wanted to show is, let's say you did this run and you analyze everything, you know what's going on. The next run you don't want to go through everything again, right? So you use these tabs, we show you the delta. This shows you what happened, what's new since the last run. And this tab shows you if you fixed any issues, shows you what has been resolved since the last run.
Oh, that's definitely going to be super useful for folks.
All right, that's all I had, Anna.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ebru. It's really cool to see SQL assessments, and I hope folks will go get hands-on. We put links to everything in the blog, so check it out. And again, Ebru, thanks so much for coming on Data Exposed.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, we're going to move right along. I just have one more set of blogs, I think, that I wanted to share with you all. And this will go quick because Niko, when he talked about Azure SQL Managed Instance, almost every single blog in the past month is related to one of those updates that Niko was talking about. So just putting it up there so you can see it. There was also a blog about the Azure Data Community newsletter. Definitely recommend folks involved in our community, which is probably a lot of folks tuning in, to check that out. But there is something not pictured here that I wanted to make sure we covered, and that is the developer updates, especially in the space of Azure SQL DB. We've been investing a lot to give developers what they need, and for that, I'm going to bring up Silvano from the SQL DB team to tell us all about it. Silvano, thanks for coming on Data Exposed.
Thanks, Anna, for inviting me. I'm glad to be here. Big hello to the friends at the Data Platform Summit. And my name is Silvano Coriani. I'm a PM in the Azure SQL team, and I'm here representing the work of a team which is fully dedicated on improving the developer experience, working on Azure SQL and the broader family of SQL products.
Awesome, cool. So I think you're going to tell us all about some of the new things that have landed for developers with GDP.
Yeah, absolutely. So the key here is, we are trying to help developers with their biggest challenge, which is actually how to kind of seamlessly access data, integrate with other services, talk to other services within the broader family of Azure services, and also integrate with their DevOps practices and workflows, right? So across all the features that we've been announcing over the last few months, I decided to pick up a few that are currently in preview. So I'm going to be focusing specifically on the new local developer experience, including the ability to run SQL Server and Azure SQL images locally on the developer workstation. I'm going to talk about the SQL bindings for Azure Functions. Azure Functions is a very successful service to host function-based, function as a service type of applications in Azure, and now we are basically providing a simpler way to interact with Azure SQL from within those Azure functions. And we are also going to cover a little bit of the new improvements we have around JSON. We know Azure SQL and SQL Server engines are multimodal by nature, and they can deal with JSON fragments and data. And now we are introducing more and more capabilities for JSON in databases, right? So we will cover a little bit about that. And last but not least, we announced a private preview, which is basically the ability to from within our T-SQL code to reach out to other HTTP endpoints. For example, to integrate again with other services to read the information and process them as part of our SQL storage procedures, for example, or for example to pass structured data sets that we are processing as part of our SQL workflows into some other services, and let them to add, for example, some value to the data and the processes that we have in SQL. So those are the topics that we are going to cover. I would like to start from one of my favorites, actually. So local development experience, which basically is a combination of some integrated workflows that we have available in our modern development environments like VS Code and Azure Data Studio. So a number of Visual Studio Code extensions, for example, the well-known MS SQL to connect and manage connections to your SQL databases, but also the SQL database project that is basically giving developers the ability to define their own database schemas, to check for example, kind of language compatibility against a specific version or release of the Azure SQL engine, and for example, the ability to do schema comparisons and so on. And again, last but not least, the so-called Azure SQL Database Emulator. So essentially a way for pulling a container image on a developer workstation to start publishing database projects locally, to do all the kind of iterative testing and the so-called inner loop. So basically, testing and working in parallel with other developers, and then push the code artifacts, the SQL project artifacts into, for example, a GitHub repo, and from there to implement things like GitHub Actions with the SQL ability to publish the projects directly into one or more Azure public databases, the so-called kind of outer loop. Right, so you can get a lot more details on the link that you can find here on the slide, and Anna is probably going to publish as part of the this session and the documentation. So please take a look, because this is basically a way for empowered developers to run their application locally. Azure Functions integration, as I was saying, you may be familiar with some of the attributes that you have available in Azure Functions. This new SQL attribute here is basically giving you the ability to specify a query, a SQL query, or a stored procedure name, or a view name, and so on, and then make sure that within your Azure Function code you have basically access to the result set as in the form of an enumerable of object, and you can process that. You can return, for example, the results to the caller of the stored procedure, or you can also have output bindings and write back the results into another table, for example, in the database. This is changing a lot the way you're accessing data from within Azure Functions, and is simplifying dramatically the programming experience for talking to SQL databases. JSON enhancement. So the SQL Server engine is on a journey to provide full kind of end-to-end support for JSON data types, including a native data type that will come in the future. For now, what we can announce are a bunch of new functions that we have in the T-SQL language, like, for example, isJSON, that is giving us the ability to check, to validate a JSON fragment and to return a Boolean, true if that object is effectively a JSON fragment. The JSON path exists in order to validate if in your JSON that you're validating, there's a specific path that your logic maybe is going to check out of that fragment. And two interesting functions here that are basically going to to combine to basically construct your JSON objects as part of your SQL logic, and same for JSON arrays, right? So you can, as part of your SQL queries, you can actually create and manipulate JSON objects and arrays the way you like, and create your custom structures. Last but not least, as I was saying, the HTTPS API endpoints integration. So basically, we are introducing a new storage procedure, this SP invoke external REST endpoint, which is basically giving the SQL developers the ability to invoke through get or post, any HTTP verb, an external endpoint, and pass a payload, which is a JSON fragment that you may be, for example, manipulating as part of your SQL logic in a storage procedure. Pass that payload to an external endpoint, and then let that external endpoint to process. For example, it could be something like a cognitive service endpoint, can be something, an ML service, which is processing a bunch of data that we are sending. Or again, to invoke something like an external Azure function, or a logic app, or simply push, for example, a subset of the data into Event Hub or Event Grid in order to implement an event-driven application composed by a bunch of other components in addition to your T-SQL database. Right. So this is a very, very interesting one. For now, this is in private preview, so you can sign up to get access to this new feature using this link. As part of these previews, for now we are limiting access to external services to a set of well-known, fully qualified domain names within the Azure realm. But again, before GA, we may adapt and change this a little bit.
Awesome.
So that's pretty much all we have.
Yeah, it's a lot that you have. So thanks for sharing it with us, Silvano. I think it's awesome how we're always like pushing the envelope on what's possible and trying to make it easier for developers. So thanks again for coming on and sharing that with us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Awesome. All right, we're going to move right along. We have just a minute left, maybe, but I'm going to bring on Marisa to talk to us a little bit about Data Exposed.
Sure, and I can make it quick. And I just want to say I'm so grateful to be part of Data Platform Summit. And I know this is one of our 65 sessions I think we have, along with a Women in Technology panel. We have Data Girls, which are our clinic-like sessions where you can actually meet with the product group. We have keynotes. It's just, we're really involved and super excited to be a part of it. I just wanted to give a brief update, and I have some information on the next slide, and you'll also put that in the blog. But Data Exposed, the title of this session is Data Exposed Live News Updates. But Data Exposed is a show that Anna is the host of. These are snackable, about 10-minute episodes of the latest and greatest of what's going on. We demonstrate features, we talk about the latest news, we go into topics, and then sometimes we deep dive and create these series like what's on the screen, where we kind of talk more about these products. We make a series of anywhere from 5 to 10 episodes, and we get more granular on that information. So I won't go into that. Take a screenshot of this slide just to wrap this up, but our Data Exposed episodes are always being released every Thursday. We have new content coming out, and you can find this on our YouTube channel, on Microsoft Docs. You always see it on Twitter and LinkedIn, and we post it out on social. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Marisa. And that's our show. It's been a crazy ride. I know we went over a couple minutes. Thanks so much for joining us. If you're joining from Data Platform Summit, we hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. If you haven't registered for Data Platform Summit, you can still go register and take part in all the great sessions that are happening. If you want to check all the references, please check the news update blog. So this is this link that you see here. And we're just so excited to get to do this show and get to share the latest news with us. Please comment, like, subscribe, share, all the things. And we hope to see you next time on Data Exposed.